Welcome to H2K Infosys. H2K Infosys is a E-Verify business based in Atlanta, Georgia, United States. We provide 100% job-oriented, instructor-led, face-to-face, true live online software training programs. It also includes access to Cloud Test Lab with software tools. We provide live project for you to work on. We also provide assistance with mock interviews, resume preparation and review, and job placement assistance. H2K Infosys is trusted by so many students across the world. H2K Infosys provides world-class services in IT training with real-time project work for corporates and individuals, special IT training for MS students in the United States, software design, development, QA manual and automation, performance testing and maintenance, IT staff augmentation, job placement assistance, and tech support.
So I'm entering some name. See, I just entered S and it has submitted the request to the server as the length is odd. Length is now currently 1. That means it is an odd value and it has responded back with username already in use. If I remove this, you can see that the username dot length value, which is equal to 0, and it has executed that particular if loop, if statement, and it has set the value as empty spaces. Currently, the value is, the length value is 2, that means even value, and it has responded back with username available, and you can see that it has displayed in green color, this time in red color, because it has executed username not available, and it has changed the style color. Here you can see that request object equal to, here I have placed in at this level request object, which is S, L, L, E, L, E, L, whatever the data I'm entering. You can see that with each and every stuff, with each and every key press, it is sending the request to the server. Even if you remove also, you can see that it is sending the request to the server. Normally, this is how all the registration pages will work to contact the database, because we don't want to submit the form until and unless he has entered all the fields, but we want to validate our username whether it is available or not. As of now, we are sending all the requests to JSP pages. What if we want to integrate with our Spring MVC code? That means whenever a user enters the username, we don't want to send the request to the JSP page. We want to use our Spring controller to process the request and send the response back to script code. There won't be any change with respect to our form submission on the Ajax side. You just need to use the qualified path to send the request to the Spring module. In Spring MVC, we have learned how to use REST kind of path. REST kind of a path, nothing but you can just specify your context root, because your context root also required. Until now, when you are using form action, you are not specifying the context root. But in case of working at the scripting level, you need to specify the fully qualified resource path in terms of your context path. And after that, you are going to specify your controller, and you are going to specify your actual method which needs to be invoked. And if you want, you can specify some parameters as well. So this is the only change that you need to make when you want to contact any other kind of frameworks. As of now, we are just contacting a resource which is deployed directly onto the server. But currently, we want to use a resource that is available under the framework control. We have already learned about REST type of form submissions. So you can see that I'm just specifying, I'm just adding our context path, and the rest of the path code we have already seen when we are submitting the form. That means you need to write a method which accepts the request mapping as user validate, and once after that, we need to see how response will be sent back to our script code instead of the dispatch servlet. Normally, when a Spring handles the request, whenever it has executed the method which was associated with a request mapping, once after processing the business logic, it will respond back to the dispatcher servlet. So we need to inform the Spring framework this was a request generated by the script code, but not by our JSPs or form submissions. The only change that we need to do at our URL level. Currently, you can see that the context path is Spring MVC example project, and once after that, my controller, it is hello, and the method name is validate user details, and after that, I'm retrieving the parameter username, and I'm sending it as a query parameter to the server. So in our Spring MVC example project, I have a controller called hello controller, and hello controller at the top level, it accepts the request with the path hello. We have already seen about message, date, and all those stuff. Currently, I have mapped to validate user. And here you can see that validate user, and I'm accepting a parameter request param username string username. See, the business logic code, same as that of whatever that we have seen with respect to our JSP page, but only change is at the response level. At the response level, you can see that I have an annotation called @response body, which informs to the Spring framework this is a direct response to the script or HTML, but it's not required for dispatcher servlet to contact the view resolver. So whatever the response that we are sending, this is the final response, and there is no need for dispatcher servlet to resolve the actual view based on the response. Either it can be a string or a whole HTTP response, or it can be an XML, any kind of stuff. This will be just like a direct response to the browser, but not a request to view resolver. This is the annotation that will inform to the Spring framework. If you didn't specify this one, Spring will contact the dispatcher servlet based on the response whatever that you are sending. So you should include this response at the response return value. And everything else, you can see that everything else is same. You are going to specify the value. I guess this is the one, sorry. Validate user details. Yeah, validate user details. And after that, you are going to process the request by using username parameter, perform the business logic, finally respond back with the string, whatever that you have prepared previously. So no need to change any kind of stuff, front end level or the server side level. You just need to change the URL at your open method. Request parameter received, yes. If you go to hello control, request parameter received, username, and it has processed the request. It has prepared the response. Spring understands that this is a direct response, direct HTTP response, and not a request to the view solver, and it has responded back directly to the browser, nothing but your script code. And your script, the ready state change, it has received the event, and it has processed the response and displayed through the user. You can see that your Spring framework has received all the requests. So this is how you just need to integrate your Spring framework with Ajax. Only change is you just need to add an annotation at the response body, and the second thing is you need to specify the fully qualified URL to submit the actual request. See, based on this, your Spring will understand that this is a REST type of form submission, and it will take the hello and it will map the controller, and based on the second parameter, valid user detail, second path, it will find out the actual method that needs to be invoked, and it will resolve the method call or method execution to this method. And based on the request params, we already know how it will prepare the request params. It will just retrieve all the parameters, and if you are expecting the same parameter, it will provide you based on the request param annotation, and you can get the username directly without being asked or by using HTTP solid request object. Let me know if you guys have any doubts in this.
Chris?
Yep. Hey, Vijay.
Sorry, I joined maybe around 15 minutes late. Somewhere you entered greater than 30. What was that?
That is like a simple business logic code. Simple code I have written to identify. See, I just want to switch between red and green color, right? So I need to identify a case like whether the response length is 30 or not. You can just verify whether the response consists of username available or username not available, and based on that also you can change the content.
But are you saying that the total length of the user is greater than 30? No, right?
The response string, whatever that was returned by our validation page. See, currently the response will be either username available or username already in use, right?
Oh, this is more than 30 characters. Okay.
Oh yeah, this one is 30 characters. So I just used a dummy logic there, and I have changed the color of the text. You can specify like response dot, whether you can verify if the response dot index of or substring you can use.
Available.
Yeah, you can just verify that particular logic, and you can change the color.
Okay, got it.
If you guys well aware of JavaScript code, then it might not be a big issue to understand XML HTTP request object, and just practice as many as you can. No, Jitin, it's case sensitive. In case of JavaScript code, everything is case sensitive. It won't understand. Yeah, scripting, the browser won't process, if at all, if you didn't specify the attributes properly. And one more thing is, it is difficult to identify what exactly is the issue, because script won't provide any kind of errors to you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This is what which is currently used in Google and all. When you type something, immediately it keeps filtering. It's the same thing logic is used.
Yeah, but for Google, it uses GWT. They have their own scripting code. On top of Ajax, you can say, they have used integrated with EXTJS, extensive JavaScript. They have used GWT plus EXTJS to work on this particular code. But it is also just like Ajax code, scripting code.
Oh.
Yeah. GWT nothing but Google Web Toolkit, which is developed by Google team.
So can we use it? We can't use it.
Sorry?
Can we use that?
Yeah, we can also use that one, but you need to learn the whole framework first. GWT is like yeah, it's kind of a big one.
Okay.
Yeah. Design patterns. We are going to discuss only at the high level. What are all the design patterns that we have covered until now? The main purpose of design pattern, see, design pattern is not like a standard that we are supposed to follow, or it's not a must that needs to be used by all the projects. It will be provided by your architect or manager level. They will decide, first of all, what kind of a pattern that we need to follow. And once after that, they will specify to you whether to go for certain design pattern, whether you will go for a factory design pattern or MVC design pattern or DAO design pattern. So you just need to code according to the pattern. The main purpose of design pattern is, normally, as of now, so many projects got developed. So people came to know that if we use web services more than EJBs, it will be kind of easy for communication, or SOAP will take care about handling or fault kind of stuff easily instead of going for RPC calls using EJBs. So based on the experience, you can say, or the project usage, or the number of issues that these guys have faced. So based on those stuff, they came up with a certain solution for all the existing problems. Normally, whenever there is a problem occurred, or if you use JDBC instead of DAO, you'll get connection issues, or you'll get some choked kind of stuff at the server level if you didn't close the prepared statement or your connection or result set properly. If you hit 700 requests or 1000 requests within a fraction of a second, your JDBC won't handle those many requests, because at the connection, sorry, at the server level, database server level, connections max of, you'll get 100 or 150. You won't get 700 at the same time. So those are all the issues normally you'll face in any kind of project. Design pattern, nothing but a solution for an existing problem and it was already specified or it was already identified and provided that to you as a pattern. If you follow that pattern, you won't again fed up with that particular problem and you can easily come out of the problem. Design patterns are categorized into three parts. The first one is creational pattern, which will deal with creation of objects. Second one, structural pattern, how to deal with combining the objects. Normally, combining the objects nothing but we need a communication between different classes, or else we can't process the whole project or the whole request itself. We definitely need a communication between the classes, and how the structure, how to communicate between two different objects, either to follow an interface is better one than an abstract class or not, either to go ahead and create an object or not. So those kind of structure, it will be maintained by our structural patterns. The next one is, which is an important one, behavioral patterns. Behavioral pattern, it will deal with how to interact between two different objects. And what happens if there is a tight coupling between the objects? What if we need to extend the action class and provide the definition for execute method? And if at all, if we are using annotations and if we write our own methods, what happens to that? How the framework will control the handling. So those kind of issues have already identified. See, even struts they came up with at the first level, and they have released struts 1, 1.3 with by tight coupling. That means you need to extend the class and provide the definition for execute method. Once after 3 or 4 years, they came to know that this is just like becoming a complex application, and people have started comparing with EJBs. Why are we extending a class? Why are we supposed to provide a definition for execute method only? So people came up with such type of problems, and people fed up with the tight coupling. And once after that, Apache has released a newer version, Struts 2. Struts 2 is entirely based on annotations and interceptors. So this is also comparable to our Spring framework. So the design patterns that we are going to cover, the first and foremost important one is singleton design pattern. We have used singleton design pattern also in our Servlet program for session factory. Singleton design pattern, which specifies or which suggests that at any point of time, only one instance of the object needs to be available in the entire JVM. That means even if number of applications, so number of clients request for that particular object, you are going to provide only a single object for all the clients. Singleton design pattern. See, for our session factory, we need to have only one session factory in the entire web server, because 100 clients can log into the page, and we need to verify or validate all the 100 clients, and we need to retrieve the details for all the requests. So it won't be coming from the same client or same computer, you can say. So you are going to get the request for number of clients. That means for each and every request, your web container will create a separate thread. That means it will create a separate session factory for each and every client. But we don't want the session factory to be created for each and every client. We just want only one instance of session factory in the entire JVM so that it will be shared by all the clients or all the threads. That means you want to follow a design pattern which is singleton design pattern. Singleton design pattern, what it suggests is at any point of time your JVM will consist of only a single instance and it is shared by or used by all the clients. 3 steps we need to follow for singleton design pattern. The first step is we are not going to expose. See, let us say you are going to declare a session factory class. Let us say you are going to write a my session factory class, and with my session factory you are going to expose to the client to get a session factory. So at any point of time, the my session factory, when you are referring, you are going to return the same instance. That means we are not going to expose our public constructor to outside world. That means the creation of an object See, normally how we'll create an object? My session factory my obj equal to new my session factory. This is how we'll create from our DAO class or any other class. We'll create an object based on this particular strategy only. Currently, what we are mentioning, make your constructor as private. When you make the constructor as private, that means nobody can access this constructor or nobody can call new my session factory object. The reason for that is you made the constructor as private and you're not going to provide any parameterized constructor as well. When you specify private, outside classes, they can create an instance based on this particular call. If you are not providing an instance creation, what is the purpose of writing a class? Because we need an interaction to the my session factory class, or else you can't get a session factory outside your my session factory class. We have mentioned that we are not going to provide the constructor access outside, but we can provide access within the same class. So your class is responsible for creating an object for your session factory. The second step is create a static instance of your class, and it should be private static variable. We'll see what is the purpose of creating that. The next thing is write a public static method. Normally we'll follow the naming convention as public static void get instance. So here in get instance, you will verify whether the static variable, whether your static instance
So many of our students have given testimonials on how our training programs are. You will find them on kudzu.com and on our website h2kinfosys.com. On our website h2kinfosys.com, you will also find more detailed information on who we are, the courses that we offer, what each course covers. Also, if you're interested in a demo program, please register on our homepage on the left-hand side. Just give us more information about yourself and we will send you a link for a demo class. The demo class is absolutely free. Experience our commitment by just attending an orientation workshop at no cost. Our team of faculty and advisors are here to guide you with the right information. If you still have more questions, please feel free to call us. Call us at 770-777-1269. This is a United States number. If you're calling from the UK, call us at 020-337-17615. You can also email us at training@h2kinfosys.com or h2kinfosys@gmail.com. Thank you for watching our videos. We wish you a great career in information technology.